pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back to WION World is One. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching World DNA with me, Hem Kaur Saroya, and here's what we've lined up for you on the show this morning. Syrian government forces lose control of Daraa city in another stunning blow for President Bashar al-Assad's rule after rebels wrested other key cities from his grip. Seventeen people killed in an Israeli strike on a house in the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza. 39 wounded in the strike, which damaged multiple neighboring houses. At least 11 people killed in Russian attacks on Ukraine's Zaporizhia, while 2 were killed in Kryvyi Rih. Ukrainian President Zelensky slams Russia and Putin over 2 aerial attacks. New York City Police believes the man who fatally shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has left the city as the hunt for the gunman passed the crucial 48-hour mark. Thousands protest outside South Korea's National Assembly, calling for President Yoon Suk-yeol to resign ahead of a vote to impeach him over martial law decision. Yoon says he will not impose a second martial law. Notre Dame to be formally reopened today after 5 years of the Paris Cathedral being devastated by a fire, with US President-elect Donald Trump among world leaders there to celebrate its remarkably rapid restoration. Former Wimbledon finalist Nick Kyrgios will participate in his first Grand Slam after long absences at next month's Australian Open with protected ranking. In another blow for President Bashar al-Assad's rule, the Syrian government has lost control of the Daraa city after rebels wrested other key cities from its grip. Daraa was dubbed the cradle of the revolution early in Syria's civil war after activists accused the government of detaining and torturing a group of boys for scribbling anti-Assad graffiti on their school walls in 2011. While Aleppo and Hama fell to an Islamist-led rebel alliance, Daraa fell to local armed groups. according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Earlier this week, a rebellion group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that was confined to the northwest, made a surprise attack. They took over Aleppo in the north and Hama in central Syria to reach closer to the capital of Damascus. Rebel fighters and residents were seen celebrating in the streets of Hama after the forces took control of the city. After capturing the two cities, rebels are advancing towards Homs, which, if seized, would open the road straight to Damascus. In the latest Russian and Syrian strikes have killed 20 civilians near Homs. Syria's defense ministry has said it is conducting attacks north of the city with cover from the joint Syrian-Russian Air Force. Fearing rebels advance, tens of thousands of members of Assad's minority are fleeing Homs. Meanwhile, Iran and Iraq have issued a joint statement with Syria warning that sweeping rebel gains at the expense of the government's forces pose a danger to the whole region. During a visit to Baghdad, Iran's top diplomat Abbas Araghchi said that if Syria becomes a safe place for terrorists, they should expect the return of the Islamic State group and other terrorist groups. At the joint press conference with Iraqi and Iranian counterparts, Syrian foreign minister said that Syria's armed forces were carrying out their national duty in confronting this terrorist attack, emphasizing that the rebel advance in parts of Syria represents a serious threat to the region.
I clearly presented the various aspects of regional and international interference in everything that is happening in Syria and has happened in Syria in the past. I emphasized that this interference has been exposed and revealed, and that it aims at realizing historic ambitions to divide the region and redraw its political map.
The United States, on its part, has said that it would continue to fight Russian and Iranian support to the Syrian regime, while stressing the U.S. is closely monitoring developments in Syria. The White House has stated that the Assad regime's reliance on Russia and Iran has created the conditions now unfolding, including the collapse of regime lines in northwest Syria. And in other news from West Asia, an Israeli strike killed at least 17 people in central Gaza. Gaza's civil defense agency said a house in the Nusrat refugee camp was targeted in the strike. 39 wounded people were taken to nearby hospitals after the strike, which damaged multiple neighboring houses. Apart from that, Gaza's civil defense agency reported deadly airstrikes around Kamal Adwan Hospital in the Gaza Strip, as well as direct fire on the health facility. According to the agency, 29 people were killed, dozens wounded by Israeli shelling in northern Gaza, especially around Kamal Adwan, one of the area's last functioning health centers. Several witnesses described intense bombings in the vicinity of the hospital. The hospital director, Hossam Abu Safeh, said at least 4 staff were killed in the attack.
Well, all night there was heavy bombing around the hospital, around Kamal Adwan. Early in the morning, around 4 o'clock, there was an IDF tank seen outside the hospital, and through the people they were kind of informed and told that everyone had to move outside of the hospital. This kind of resulted in panic and what we understand that people started to climb the wall and to escape. And of course, and this panic attracted IDF fire. There's reported death and also detention, arrest.
However, the Israeli military denied the claims that it had struck or entered Kamal Adwan Hospital, saying it was operating next to the facility. IDF said in a statement that it would continue to operate against terror infrastructure and terrorists in northern Gaza, including adjacent to the hospital. According to a statement by health authorities in the enclave, the Palestinian death toll from ongoing Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip has risen to 44,612, with 5,834 others injured. In another development, Israel's military said that it planned to reinforce its forces stationed in the occupied Golan Heights and near the border with Syria, where civil war is reignited between the government and rebel groups. The Israeli military said in a statement that it was monitoring developments and is prepared for all scenarios, offensive and defensive alike. Meanwhile, Bahraini foreign minister at the Manama dialogue called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and a political solution in Syria.
Where Bahrain is calling for an immediate ceasefire the release of hostages and detainees, and the unhindered delivery of humanitarian and reconstruction aid. The conflict in Lebanon, where we urge all parties to abide by the ceasefire and comply with their obligations under Security Council Resolution 1701 and international law.
Now, a massive fire erupted after Russian missiles struck the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia on Friday night. Zaporizhia Governor Ivan Fedorov has claimed that at least 11 people have been killed, 19 others have been injured in the strike. He further stated that at least 2 children have been wounded in the attack. The governor has further claimed that a missile damaged an administrative building in the region. Rescue operations are still underway. Ukrainian firefighters put out the fierce blaze after deadly Russian strike. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has slammed Russian President Putin over the attack. Zelensky stated that Russia has no interest in striking a deal to end its invasion. As per a Ukrainian official, the Ukrainian president is set to travel to Paris this week and is also expected to meet US President-elect Donald Trump. Meanwhile, European Union's new defense chief, Andris Keblius, has said that EU needs to increase its spending and change its policies to ramp up its defense to counter threats from Russia. The former Lithuanian Prime Minister began work as the EU's first ever dedicated defense commissioner this month, tasked with turbocharging Europe's defense industry.
Well, the question is here enough of political will to defend ourselves? Or, somebody wants to, how to say, that's a sad joke, to surrender. That's the alternative, And, of course, things can change. I'm, still hopeful, optimistic that things can change even in Russia. But it will depend very much on our policies.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has replaced the governor of the Kursk region. Putin has appointed Alexander Kinshtein, a pro-Kremlin lawmaker, as the acting governor of Kursk. Putin has claimed that the region needs a crisis manager.
I would like to offer you the position of acting governor of the Kursk region, bearing in mind that crisis management is in demand there now, certainly in the situation in which the Kursk region is in now.
In a meeting in Minsk, Belarus, Putin has said Russia could deploy its newly developed hypersonic missile Oreshnik in Belarus next year as it begins to ramp up production of the weapon. Now, during the visit, Putin will also sign a treaty offering security guarantees for Moscow's closest ally, including the possible use of Russian nuclear weapons. Now, there is not one but 2 countries that are witnessing mass protests. The demonstrations are being carried out in support of the European Union. At the epicenter of these movements are the countries of Romania and Georgia. Romania's top court on Friday cancelled the presidential runoff election that was scheduled to be held on Sunday. The statement read, and I'm quoting here, "The court has decided to annul the entire electoral process for the election of the President of Romania to ensure the correctness and legality of the electoral process." Romanian President spoke after the annulment of the presidential election by the Constitutional Court and said that Romania will remain a solid and secure NATO ally.
I say this for the EU. Romania is and remains a safe, solid and a pro-European country. I say this for NATO. Romania remains a strong and reliable ally.
While the country's far-right outsider Calin Georgescu, who topped the first round of the presidential election, claimed that the country's democracy was under attack and termed it a coup d'etat.
Today, the Romanian state has taken democracy and trampled it. Today's constitutional court decision is more than a legal controversy. It is basically a formalized coup d'etat. The rule of law is in an induced coma, and justice, which is subordinated to political orders, has practically lost its essence.
Now, the decision comes amid allegations of election interference by Russia and a wave of protests and rallies in the country. On Thursday, thousands rallied in support of the pro-European presidential candidate. just days ahead of the now scrapped presidential runoff. Many were seen waving European Union flags and chanting slogans of freedom. While in Georgia, thousands took to the streets in the capital Tbilisi, demanding that the government resume the process of gaining a European Union membership. The ruling Dream Party had suspended talks on accession to EU last week, and that decision triggered mass demonstrations and rallies outside the parliament. In the first round of the elections last month, far-right leader George Scoot established himself in the comfortable lead. The result has many worried that George Scoot might win the presidential elections, putting a pro-Russia leader at the helm of affairs. His rising popularity also has raised concerns over Romania's future with EU and NATO, but with elections now scrapped, political uncertainty has increased for the country. Over in Georgia, elections are long over. Even though the opposition has been contesting the result for weeks, the ruling party continues to make waves. Leaders from several opposition parties are actively involved in the pro-EU protests, which have entered the second week.
Protesting here that these people who declared themselves as the government and the parliament have basically stolen elections and hijacked our nation in favor of our occupier, Russian Federation. So basically this is an occupying regime and we are protesting against this occupying regime.
If we want freedom, we need to fight for freedom. So it is dangerous to be here, but it is worth it.
Now, thousands are urging the government to resume the membership process for EU after the Dream Party suspended talks till 2028. The ruling party has repeatedly been accused of being pro-Russia. The latest stance is many opposition parties and their supporters worried about Georgia's collective identity. For a few years now, many have been batting for a more substantial European identification, and accession to EU was a step in that direction. Now, Bangladesh's interim government has removed security clearance requirements for Pakistanis and the people of Pakistani origin applying for visas. It's a policy shift that could impact regional security. While Dhaka calls it a diplomatic move, security experts warn it may reopen doors to extremism, affecting India's eastern and northeastern borders. In 2019, the Sheikh Hasina government made it mandatory for Pakistani citizens to obtain a no-objection clearance for the Bangladeshi visas. The move was rooted in Pakistan's role in the 1971 Liberation War and the 1975 assassination of then Bangladesh President Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, atrocities for which Pakistan has never issued a formal apology. Experts fear the move could reactivate networks linked to Pakistan's ISI and extremist groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, as seen during the 2001 to 2006 BNP Jamaat rule. Incidents like the 2004 Chittagong Arms Haul were also traced to Pakistan-backed elements. Islamabad is now looking to renew its influence in Dhaka. Its High Commissioner recently met BNP leader Khalida Zia and a Pakistani cargo ship docked at Chittagong port for the first time since 1971. This policy shift raises questions. It is a step towards normalization or a security risk for India? That's the question. An unknown disease has claimed 143 lives in a southwestern Congo province in the Democratic Republic of Congo this month. Local authorities report flu-like symptoms in the victims, including high fever, severe headaches. Women and children seem to be the worst affected by this mysterious disease. A medical team has been deployed to the health zone to collect samples and identify the disease. The situation remains dire. Lack of medicines in this rural region is leading to many dying in their homes without treatment. Civil society leader calls the situation extremely worrying as infections continue to rise. The World Health Organization confirms it had alerted the country's authorities last week about the illness and is now working with Congo's public health ministry to investigate. This comes as the country is already battling an mpox epidemic with over 47,000 suspected cases and more than 1,000 deaths reported.